Thank you. Our police court, the state calls Aaron Norris. Ms. Norris, will you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the evidence you're about to present in this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Go ahead and have a seat if you would, and just real quickly state your full name for the record.
My name is Erin, E-R-I-N, Norris, N-O-R-R-I-S.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, before she testifies, there's a matter the parties want me to bring up to you. And as they have indicated, they have worked together to try to streamline some of the evidence in the case, believe it or not. And I've entered into some stipulations. They want me to go over one of those with you currently. So the state and defense have entered into the following stipulations that have been approved by the court. The named victim in this case, the decedent whose remains were found on the property of 2155 Purcell Lane, Alpharetta, Cherokee County, Georgia 30004 on July 5th, 2018, is Gary Wayne Farris, date of birth 06/27/1960. All the phone records collected throughout the investigation related to Gary Wayne Farris's death are authentic and shall be admissible at trial. All the Google records obtained through the investigation related to Gary Wayne Farris's death are authentic and shall be admissible at trial. All the records obtained for cell phone towers, AT&T and Verizon during the investigation into Gary Wayne Farris's death are authentic and shall be admissible at trial. All the digital evidence, including cell phone data obtained, extracted, searched, or analyzed during the investigation into Gary Wayne Farris's death is authentic. All the reports and any opinions therein from the Georgia Bureau of Investigation Division of Forensic Sciences are authentic and shall be admissible at trial. And then I'm going to give you a charge on the laws of that, where parties stipulate to testimony, document, or exhibits that is in the nature of evidence. You may take that testimony as if it were given in court, and you may rely on it if you find it credible. However, either party may dispute such testimony by other evidence. You make all decisions in the case based on the evidence presented. All right, with that, Mr. Fogus, you can proceed. Thank you, Honor. Ms. Norris, where do you work?
I'm employed with the Georgia Bureau of Investigation in the Division of Forensic Sciences, and it's more commonly referred to as the State Crime Lab.
And how long have you worked there?
I have worked there for 16 years.
What kind of education do you have?
I received a Bachelor of Science in Biology from the University of Georgia.
And when you started working with the GBI, did you have to take any tests or do anything to get on with them?
Yes, when I first was hired on, I went through an extensive training program for DNA analysis, which lasted about a year, and that entailed different training presentations and also practical written and oral examinations that I had to successfully complete throughout that training program, and then ultimately had to pass a competency examination that mimicked what casework would be like and get the correct result.
Have you ever testified as an expert before in the state of Georgia?
Yes, I have.
By how many times?
Probably about 60 times.
What's your area of expertise?
In DNA analysis and also serological screening.
At the State Crime Lab, are you a supervisor?
Yes, I am currently an assistant manager in the forensic biology department at our headquarters laboratory.
And do you assist and train other people in the area that you work in?
Yes, I do.
What all areas do you cover? What scientists do you lead?
So I do supervise about 2 laboratory technicians that assist with different operations around our section, and I supervise a few serologists, so those are people that are screening evidence for bodily fluids such as blood, semen, and saliva, and I also supervise a few people that are specializing DNA analysis.
How many DNA tests do you think you've done or been part of through your career?
I've probably worked on at least 1,000 cases.
So this time I tender Ms. Norris, an expert in DNA and specifically analysis and the interpretation of it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, as I instructed you earlier, based upon her expertise, she has knowledge above that of a normal layperson, therefore can give her expert testimony and opinion based upon that experience. All right. Ms. Norris, you know that you're going to actually go through a bunch of reports for us today, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
So you volunteered to, we've agreed by stipulation to all the reports in this case, and what we're trying to do is use you to introduce a bunch of reports. Are you comfortable with that?
Yes.
All right, now, what I want to do is I'm going to actually tender in. It's going to be GBI DOFS. So the GBI DOFS
1, 2, 5, 6, 9, 10, 11, and that will be for Ms. Norris. It's 1, 2, 5, 6, 9, 10, 11. Then I'm also going to tender and test this time GBI DOFS report 3, which is the fibers, and 4 is the arson. And now I'll just have her. I'm actually have you do 2 for us at the end that you're not involved in at all, but we've agreed to them. Okay.
Okay.
So this time, Judge, I tender in 1, 2, 5, 6, 9, 10, 11, 3, and 4 of the GBI DOFS reports.
All right. No objection.
All right. Ms. Norris, just kind of briefly tell the jury when a test comes in and when you're testing something, for example, here blood or something like that, just kind of give us a tutorial real quickly of what the GBI does to test for DNA.
So when the evidence comes in, we're going to review any case file information that is submitted with that evidence. So that will include a submission form, which will tell us what's being submitted, as well as an incident report, which gives us a brief synopsis of what the case is so that we can better determine what type of testing to complete on each item that's being submitted. So in the biology section, the first step that we would look at is screening the evidence for bodily fluids, potentially screening for blood, semen, or saliva, depending on the case circumstances. And then if we indicate a positive result in that serological screening, then that sample would move forward for DNA analysis, where we would test the evidence to try to obtain a DNA profile from it, and then compare that DNA profile back to a DNA profile from any known individuals that were related to the case.
So basically first to see if it's blood, human blood to test, and then if it is human blood, pass it on to do the ultimate DNA testing.
Sometimes we're testing specifically for human blood and sometimes just for blood in general, but yes, we would test for blood first and then send it on to DNA analysis.
And does the GBI test every request that law enforcement asks them to do?
No, we do not. So because of limited resources, sometimes we do have to choose samples that we feel like will help answer any case questions that are needed.
You ever been part of any conversations with law enforcement explaining why you won't test certain things?
Yes.
Is that common?
It's not uncommon.
And is that getting back to law enforcement sometimes will request to test lots of things, but ultimately what you test is what the crime lab decides to test?
Ultimately, yes, we do try to pick the items of evidence that we feel like will give the best answers to any case questions, and that may also come down to what we expect we may be able to get good results from or not.
And how many people in your area test for DNA? How many employees or scientists there that do that?
I believe we have approximately 15 DNA analysts currently at the headquarters laboratory.
And how many requests do you get a year to test?
I don't know, but we are getting in hundreds per month. So.
Do you know how many y'all are clearing a year?
I don't know. I'm sorry.
Is it a lot?
It is, yes, it's a number of cases, yes.
When the test comes in, when it comes to the chain of custody, make sure everything's done right, does the GBI have certain professional credentials or policies they go by?
Yes, we have a set of policies and procedures that we have to follow every time we're analyzing evidence. And those policies and procedures are rooted in our accreditation standards that we must follow, and we are audited to every year.
Are y'all audited every year, you said?
Yes, every year.
Do you know when that's going to be, or is that a surprise audit?
No, we typically have one internal, which I believe just occurred, and then we have an external coming up next May.
How tense is it at the crime lab when this is going on?
Not too tense because we're trying to consistently keep up with these standards. So the idea is that when we're audited that we are hoping to not have any findings.
How's the crime lab doing under its guidelines and its accreditation?
We still are holding our accreditation, and from my understanding there were no findings in the last audit.
When you test something, how many scientists actually do? For example, we're going to have a report by different people that we've agreed that you can introduce, but how many scientists actually look at when there's a final report, how many scientists have looked at that, I guess the specimen or the actual test itself?
So it depends. We do sometimes do kind of an assembly line type of procedure because there are multiple steps, specifically in the DNA analysis. There are multiple steps that occur to get to the end result. But by the time the report is issued, there would be one analyst who has reviewed every single part of that case file and has made the decisions in the case file and issued that report. And then a second trained analyst would review everything in the case file and make sure that they would come to the same conclusions as the reporting analyst.
So generally two.
Yes, two people will have looked at everything.
And if there's an issue, or y'all make sure internally that you're working that out before a final opinion is released?
Yes, so that peer review process, the report would not get released if there was a discrepancy between the reporting analyst and the peer reviewer. That would need to be resolved before the report would ever be issued.
How do you actually test for DNA? What kind of machines do you use, and what is the process?
So the process takes place in 5 steps. The first step is going to be extraction, where we'll take a cutting of the sample and place it in a tube, and then we add chemicals to that tube to help break open the DNA and separate it out from the other parts that are in the sample. And so we put that on what we call BioRobot Easy 1 that does kind of a cleanup process, so that what we're left with at the end of that step is just DNA in a liquid form inside of a tube, and we've gotten rid of everything else. Then the next step in the process is quantitation, and that we are going to place on an instrument called a 7500 that's going to run through multiple cycles to estimate how much DNA we were able to recover from that first step. And then the third step is amplification, and we're going to make billions of copies of approximately 21 locations on the DNA that we are interested in looking at, and that takes place on what we call a thermal cycler. And then lastly, we will do a step called detection, where the sample goes onto an instrument called a 3500, and it is going to separate the information from each of those locations that we tested for, and ultimately a software program will create a DNA profile from the results. And that profile is going to look kind of like a graph with peaks along it, and we can use those peaks are going to be the DNA markers that we're going to use for our interpretation.
The methods and the procedures that are used to test for DNA in this case, are they something that can be reproduced?
Yes.
Are they something that are observable?
Yes.
Are they something that are measurable?
Yes.
And when these tests are done, do you follow your procedures and practice that's generally accepted in the scientific community?
Yes.
And when the result is issued, are they reliable, something that can be relied upon by the GBI and also the clients are the ones that ultimately get the reports?
Yes.
And does the GBI participate with any national organizations to make sure that their standards are consistent with what other people are doing with DNA?
So as I stated before, we are an accredited laboratory through ANAB, which is the ANSI National Accreditation Board, where ANSI stands for the American National Standards Institute. And that is a nationally recognized accreditation board that a lot of forensic laboratories around the country are accredited to. We also, in the forensic biology section, follow the FBI's QAS standards, which is the quality assurance standards.
When I think of DNA, I think there's some evidence, something is there that you may not be able to see, but scientifically you can determine what it is that relates back to a person. So it traces back to a person. But what is DNA?
So DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid, and you can think of it like a blueprint for the human body. And it's located in the cells throughout the human body, and it would be unique to each individual with the exception of identical siblings.
Let's go through some of these reports here. On the screen in front of you should be GBI DOFS 1. Do you see that?
Yes.
And what is the requested service? I'll do this with all the reports. So what is this report? What's the service requested?
This was a blood examination.
What's the report date?
The report date was 9/16/2018.
And to show we're all on the same page, it was requested by Cherokee County Sheriff's Office, is that right?
Correct.
It has an agency number listed with them, is that right?
Correct.
It says who it's requested by, is that right?
Correct.
Subject Melody Farris, subject Scott Farris, and victim Gary Wayne Farris. Do you see that?
Yes.
So make sure we're talking about this case. And then it appears in that the evidence, there's a section that says 7/18/2018, the laboratory received the following evidence from Cherokee County Sheriff's Office via lockbox. What's your lockbox? What does that mean?
When agencies are submitting evidence directly to the laboratory, they'll come in and they place the evidence into a lockbox. Once they shut the door on their side, it can no longer be accessed from that side. It can only be accessed on the other side of the lockbox by our lab support staff at the lab. So they'll remove it from the lockbox and give each case a unique identifier for DOFS, or the Division of Forensic Sciences, and then each item will get its unique item number that we'll track, and then it'll be entered into our laboratory information management system, our computer system, so that we can track everything through that.
If I ask you right now, if you could log into your computer just a random case, could you actually trace a piece of evidence like GBI item 2 or some other case? Could you actually see where it was at stages through the process?
Yes, so we do track the chain of custody is what we call it. So each item, once it's given that unique case number and item number, each item will get a barcode that traces back to that item specifically. And then every time we move the item throughout the laboratory, that barcode gets scanned. Each person has their own unique identifiable barcode, and each location or storage location has its unique barcode. So every time it's scanned to a person or a place, we are tracing that chain of custody through the barcode system.
Is keeping up and being very careful in the chain of custody and not corrupting physical evidence, is that something that GBI puts an emphasis on?
Yes, absolutely.
Is that part of your accreditation too?
Yes, it is.
If you pretty much were not very good at that, the GBI, could you lose your accreditation?
Yes.
Now you said DOFS case number, so this 2018-101-6730, is that going to be the same number for all the different types of testing and reports in this case?
Yes, it is.
So the autopsy would reference that same number, is that right?
I believe it does, yes.
All right. Under evidence, it talks about receiving things from a lockbox, and then there's this long number, 2018-101-6730, and then it's a dash or a hyphen, 002, and then below that 029. And I usually refer to those as like item 2, item 29. Is that kind of what we do when we go through these reports?
Yes, that is correct. That dash 002 and dash 029 refer to the item number.
So when I say item 2, we're going to be talking about this thing here. Is that right?
Correct.
And item 29, we're going to be talking about this other thing. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So if you could just read into the record what is the results and opinion, the expert opinion for this first test, 9/16/2018, the blood examination by, I believe it was it Angel Seacrest?
Yes, that's correct.
All right, tell us what the conclusion is.
The results from chemical and serological testing of the skin from the projectile from item 2 are consistent with blood of human origin. Samples are being submitted for DNA testing.
All right, and we're going to see item 2 is the projectile, then 29 is the skin that was taken from that. Is that right?
That's correct.
And Ms. Seagrass, was she at the time qualified as an expert to do this type of testing?
Yes, she was.
So this is a preliminary test saying there's blood there. Let's pass it on and do some DNA testing. Is that kind of how you do that?
Yes, correct. If there is blood indicated, then it would go on for DNA analysis.
All right, let's look at this next. This is GBI DOFS 2. What's the type of requested service?
This is a blood examination.
And what's the report date for this one?
Also 9/16/2018.
I believe this is also going to be done by forensic biologist Angel Seagrass.
Correct.
All right. Let's go to the evidence here. So item 13, I think what y'all usually do is like item 13 comes in with a lot of material and then you break it down individually. So 13A, 13B, et cetera. Is that right?
Correct. So for instance, if we have a paper bag that has multiple boxes that contain swabbings in it, then we will do what we call itemization. So in this instance, it went to 13A and 13B to represent different boxes that were within the outer package.
Let's look at the expert opinion in this. I think I want to work backwards. Can you just read into the record what the results and conclusions are?
Chemical examination of the swabs from items 14A, 14C, and 15A indicates the presence of blood. The samples are being submitted for DNA testing.
That's too much. All right, so 14A, which is a sealed package labeled EM1 sample wet, so evidence marker 1, and we've talked about that in the case where that's at the basement. And then 14C, evidence marker 2, sample wet. So 14C, 14A, 14C, and 15A, which is the blue shoes in the closet, shows the presence of blood. Is that right?
Correct.
And then 13A, which is garbage can stain side, and 13B, garbage can stain face, fails to reveal the presence of blood. Is that right?
That's correct.
Now, when you say fails, what does that mean? When something fails to, what could that be?
It would indicate that the blood is not present on the item. So for these specific items, we would have done chemical testing, which would include 2 different tests that we would test for blood, and they are expected to change a specific color when blood is present. And that would be one of them turns green in the presence of blood, and the other one turns pink in the presence of blood. And for these 2 samples, neither of those tests came back with a positive result. So that's why we say it failed to reveal blood.
All right, I'm going to go to GBI DOFS report number 5. What type of requested service is this one?
This is a DNA typing.
And what does that mean?
That means that we're doing the DNA analysis or DNA testing. So that's that multi-step process that I was talking about, where we get a DNA profile from the evidence and then compare it back to DNA profiles from any known individuals in the case.
And what was the report date on this one?
This was 11/5/2018.
And this was done by Kayla Bailey, a forensic biologist. Was she an expert with the GBI at the time that these reports and testing were done?
Yes, she was.
Qualified to do her job?
She was, yes.
And in this one, we have some evidence that was received. And I'm going to start at the bottom. So beginning with the paragraph where it says, the profile of Gary Wayne Farris, could you read that for us?
Actually, if I may, this report was actually replaced by a later report, which we call an amended report. And that is because there were deemed to be errors on the report. And so we did an investigation, what we call a corrective action report. And we reissued a new report with the corrections. So as far as the lab is concerned, this report would be null and void. It's been replaced.
Makes sense. But in this one, just to go through it real quickly, the profile of Gary Wayne Farris matches the profile obtained from the swabbings from the basement floor 14A, which is EM1 sample wet, and 14C, EM2 sample wet, and then item 29, the skin recovered from item 2. But you replace this, I think, is it going to be with your...
Yes,
11?
that is the report that's titled Amended Report. So all of this information will be in the Amended Report, yes.
All right. And what was off on this one that you had to go back and replace it?
There were a few things that were noted. One of them was a technical note, which was in the statistical frequency that was calculated for a match. There was one marker that was included that should not have been, so that the statistical frequency had to be recalculated. And
when y'all catch something that's off, do y'all correct it like you do?
Yes. That is part of our quality system, that as soon as we identify an error, as I said, we open what's called a corrective action report. We do an investigation, and we do steps to go through to try to make sure we haven't made more errors and how to prevent them from happening in the future and to rectify it. So in this case, we issued the amended report.
Let's look at GBI DOFS 6, this 6 report here. What is requested? What type of service?
Blood examination.
And what's the report date?
12/18/2018.
And what is the results and conclusion for this one?
Chemical examination of the shirt from item 6 indicates the presence of blood. Samples are being submitted for DNA analysis.
Okay, there was a kind of a burgundy T-shirt that was taken from the scene, which is item 6, and 6 is the actual T-shirt, and then 31. What is GBI item 31?
So that was a cutting that was taken from the shirt, which would have been taken by the serologist at the time of testing, and that cutting is what is actually sent forward for DNA analysis.
Let's look at GBI DOFS 9, the 9th report. What is the requested service here?
Blood examination,
And what is the report date?
6/26/2019.
All right, let's go to the results and conclusions. Let's walk through this. So what's the first sentence here?
Results from chemical and serological testing of the swabs from items 19B and 25B are consistent with blood of human origin.
All right, so 19B is a sealed package labeled swab to sample. And if you go back up one, this kind of comes in, that's going back to the Kubota tractor, is that right?
That's correct.
So Kubota tractor, swab to sample, and they've heard about it being on a foot step on the tractor. So that's 19B, and 25B is going to be sealed package labeled from L2 shifter, but if you go back up one level to 25, is that relating to the Kubota RTV?
Yes, that's correct.
All right, and we talked about the shifter on the RTV. So the tractor, 19B, and the RTV, 25B, this is saying that so far is consistent with human blood.
Yes, correct.
All right. Then that's forward on for DNA sampling. And then begin with chemical examination of the towel. Read that sentence for us, please.
Chemical examination of the towel from item 26A and the washcloth from item 26E is inconclusive for the presence of blood. The two presumptive tests for blood did not produce the same result.
All right. So they saw some photographs of some towels and washcloth in the scene in a washing machine, I believe. What are those? So what is that saying? 26A, which is a white towel, and 26E, which is a white washcloth. What is that saying there?
So there could be a couple different reasons why we may define something as inconclusive for blood. And that's, as I previously mentioned, that we're doing two different color change tests on the sample. So one instance of being inconclusive would be that one of the tests changed to the color we were expecting if blood was present, but the other test did not change color. So that could result in an inconclusive. The other way that we may end up with an inconclusive result is when the test results in the color change other than the expected color. So I mentioned before how one is expected to be green in the presence of blood and the other is pink in the presence of blood. So if we get a color other than the expected result, we would deem that inconclusive.
So you can't say it is or it's not, it's just inconclusive.
That's correct.
And then what could cause a test to come back? Could washing towels that have blood on, could that affect it and make it be inconclusive?
It's possible.
Could chemicals, as in trying to clean up the blood, could that make it inconclusive?
Possibly.
Now, 26B, C, D, and F, these washcloths, read that line to tell us what that result is.
Chemical examination of the washcloths from item 26B, 26C, 26D, and 26F fails to reveal the presence of blood.
So couldn't find any blood. The opinion is we cannot find blood on these samples.
In those items, both tests did not result in a color change.
Is there scientifically, is there a reason why if there was blood on an object, like you knew there was blood on an object, is there a way to clean that or cause it not to come back and be negative or failed to reveal the presence of blood? Can you clean it up or can you dissipate it somehow?
If the blood is removed from an item, then yes, it would. Our test would not show blood.
Could washing do that?
It's possible, yes.
Could the situation that you find the item, say how it is in nature or the circumstances of where it's at, could that corrupt or cause it to fail?
It would depend on the circumstances. if it's just the blood is removed or just not really enough there for us to detect it in our tests, that would really be the only reason I would think we would not be able to get a positive result.
Again, this one was done by Angel Segrest.
Yes.
All right, let's see. How many reports have you presented before at trial? Is this the most?
This is probably the most, yes.
All right, let's go to number 10. And again, this is because the parties have worked together to stipulate these things. GBI DOFS 10. What is the requested service here?
This is DNA typing.
And what was the report date for this one?
This was 8/8/2019.
All right, now this is going to refer to, you see the line that says the DNA obtained from the swab from item 19B contained the DNA profile of one individual. Do you see that?
Yes.
All right, so again, 19 is going back to the Kubota tractor. So 19B is the swab taken from the tractor. All right, could you read the results? And I'll let you explain all the scientific language after that, but if you can just kind of the introductory part about talking about whether it matches the profile of Gary Wayne Farris.
The profile obtained from the swab from item 19B matches the profile of Gary Wayne Farris, and then the remaining are the locations that were tested and compared.
And this is STR testing or loci?
Yes, STR stands for short tandem repeats, and that's the DNA analysis that we're performing.
And it says 1 or 2 alleles were obtained at TPOX. What does that mean?
So TPOX is one of the locations that we test for in the DNA. And when we say 1 of 2 alleles, that's because each person would be expected to have 1 or 2 alleles at every location that we test for. One marker will come from your dad, and one marker will come from your mom. So if mom and dad are giving different markers, we'll see 2 different alleles or DNA markers. And if mom and dad give the same information, then we'll see 1 DNA allele or marker at the location. So in this specific statement where we're saying that the profile of Gary Wayne Farris contains 1 of the 2 alleles observed in the profile, that's because the bloodstain card that was later identified to have come from Gary Wayne Farris, we got an incomplete DNA profile from. We were missing a DNA marker from the location TPOX. So that's what that's referring to. So because it was not missing, we could not do because it was missing, we could not do a comparison from any of the evidence samples to that specific DNA marker because it wasn't there to compare.
And we've stipulated that the remains are Gary Wayne Farris. Now tell us the numbers. I've seen numbers, y'all have beyond million and billion and trillion, y'all go way out there. So tell us, in this match, it talks about the frequency and the numbers associated with the match to Gary. Read that and tell us what that means, if you would.
So the frequency in which the profile obtained from the swab from item 19B would be expected to occur in a given population is approximately 1 in 8 nonillion, using the information that we compared.
The higher the number, the more strong match it would be. Is that fair to say, or how would you categorize that?
It would be more rare the higher the number is.
So higher the number, more likely it does match to the person.
Yes.
All right, now, 25B, and again, 25B is from the swab, the L2 shifter from the Kubota RTV. The profile from that, who did it match?
Sorry, I just want to clarify when I said yes. The match is a match, meaning all the information that was present in the swab's profile matches to what information we had in the bloodstain card from Gary Wayne Farris. So that is a match. It's the statistical frequency is just giving weight to that match. So how often would we expect to see that profile? So the higher the number, the more rare that specific profile would be to find in the population.
And in this case, we're able to take a sample for the defendant to match it. What match came back to 25B?
So the DNA obtained from the swab from item 25B contained the DNA profile of 1 individual, and that profile matches the profile of Melody Farris.
And what was the probability, statistically speaking, for that?
The frequency in which that profile from the swab from item 25B would be expected to occur in a given population is approximately 1 in 4 octillion.
Is there any way to quantify that number, how many zeros that is?
If I may refer to my notes. So that an octillion would be a number with 27 zeros after it.
And again, that was 25B, the L2 shifter, go up one level, goes back to the Kubota RTV. All right, let's go to, Norris, you have another one here. GBI DOFS 11. What type of request is done for this one?
So this is the amended report that we discussed previously.
And what was so amending, I think it was report 5. And what is the report date on this one?
The report date is 10/7/2019.
And what we're going to be talking about is item 2, which is the bullet, seal pack containing 38 bullet. Item 29 is the skin recovered from item 2. And then we also have 14 A and C, evidence marker 1 and 2 from the basement. And then 15A, which is a swab from the blue chute in the closet. And all right, so first you start off and say this report replaces the November 5th, 2018 DNA typing request in its entirety. Is that right?
Correct.
All right, so let's get down and go through these results. Let's talk about the DNA obtained from the swabbing from the basement floor. Tell us about item 14A and 14C, which is EM1 and EM2. Tell us about that and what does it match and the statistical numbers for those.
So the results from each of those swabbings contain the DNA profile of one individual, and that DNA profile matched the profile of Gary Wayne Farris for all locations that we could compare at.
And what is the frequency of that match?
The frequency of that, we would expect to see the profile approximately 1 in 8 nonillion within a given population.
All right, so the match, what we're talking about here, the DNA obtained from the swabs from the basement floor, item 14A and 14C, EM1 and EM2, and the skin recovered from projectile from item 2. So item 2 is the actual bullet and 29 is the skin itself. That is what matches Gary Wayne Farris. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct, with a frequency of approximately 1 in 8 nonillion.
All right. 15A, I believe, is going to be the swab from the blue shoe that was in the closet. And tell us about the matching to this.
So the DNA obtained from the swab from a blue shoe from item 15A contained the DNA profile of one individual, and that DNA profile matches the profile of Melody Farris, and the frequency in which that profile from the swab from the blue shoe would be expected to be seen within a population is 1 in 4 octillion.
Port 1, port 2, port 5, 6, 9, 10, and 11. Ms. Norris, if you can help me be a narrator for me, I'm going to go to GBI DOFS 3 and 4. You did not test these. We stipulated to them. So, Judge, at this time, I'm tendering to evidence GBI DOFS 3 and 4.
All right.
Any objection?
No, but
All right, they're moved. Busted.
All right, here we go. So if you can help me, tell us what is the requested service on this one,
Requested service is fibers and textiles.
and what was the date, the report date?
Report date was 9/20/2018.
All right, now, the evidence that was received, 2, the 38 bullet, 29, the skin, and then 30 sealed package containing 1 microscopic slab of possible question fiber from item 29. So this is relating to fibers and textiles, see if there's anything on that. Can you just kind of read the results and conclusion, beginning with the material, that sentence?
The material, item 29, recovered from the projectile, item 2, was examined to determine whether or not it is textile in nature. Examination of the material, item 29, recovered from the projectile, item 2, fails to reveal characteristics typical of textile material. Further examination reveals individual fibers embedded in the material. These were collected and preserved for possible future analysis.
And then GBI DOFS number 4. What is the requested service?
Requested service is arson analysis,
What's the report date?
9/26/2018.
Now, under evidence, there's GBI items 7, 8, and 9. Could you tell us what 7, 8, and 9 are?
Item 7 is a sealed can or cans containing gauze identified as recovered from hands of Melody Farris. Item 8 is a sealed can or cans containing gauze identified as recovered from hands of Scott Farris. And item 9 is sealed can or cans containing debris identified as recovered from the scene.
These, I think of accelerants, but I think the term that is used is ignitable liquids is what GBI uses. Can you just read the results and conclusion for us?
Analysis by gas chromatography / mass spectrometry of the gauze, item 7, fails to reveal the presence of any ignitable liquids. Analysis by gas chromatography / mass spectrometry of the gauze from item 8 fails to reveal the presence of any ignitable liquids. Analysis by gas chromatography / mass spectrometry of the debris from item 9 fails to reveal the presence of any ignitable liquids. The procedure employed does not detect the presence of light volatiles such as certain alcohols and acetone.
Nothing further, Judge, at this time.
All right, Greg.
good morning, Ms. Norris, or afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Michael Ray. I represent Ms. Farris. I've just got a few things to go over with you. Do you know anything about this case?
Not a lot, just whatever was in our case file.
Okay. But do you know that Mr. Farris's body was burned?
Yes, I was aware of that.
Okay. Because I'll show you. So this was Shaw 10. This has already been admitted. So that was essentially the remains, okay?
Okay.
Okay, I'm showing you that because I got a question to ask you. That question is, in GBI number 5, item number 4 is a bloodstain card. All right, so you're familiar with bloodstain cards?
Yes.
Can you explain to the jury what it is?
Yes, so blood would be collected from a person and then placed onto what we call an FTA card. It's a specialized paper that helps to preserve blood, and so that the blood would be deposited onto that card, and that's what we're referring to as a blood stain card. And that's what we would take a cutting of that card to test for our DNA profile.
Okay, you saw the photograph that I showed you, right?
Yes.
Alrighty. Do you have any idea where they got blood?
I do not. I have no knowledge as to how the bloodstain card was collected or preserved.
You just get it.
Correct.
Okay. Now, and I'm going to kind of bounce around. Mr. Fogus had asked you about the towels that were tested. From your knowledge, do you know where that white towel came from?
I do not.
Okay. When you write these reports, and I'll show, let me go ahead and just pull them all up. It'll be easier that way. 1, 5, 10. So when you write these reports, and so like at item 26, so that's the bag, and inside of that bag are washcloths and towels.
Yes, correct.
And then you have to, essentially you add in this information based on what you're seeing either on the outside of the bag or the contents of the bag.
That's correct.
Right.
Or with the submission information.
So if it said like white towel found in X location, you would probably note that on your report.
I can't speak to what was done in this case since I did not create the evidence in this case. But
No, I'm just asking for you. Like if
for me
would you would have
personally,
done it?
yes, I would, but
Okay.
it doesn't mean that every person at the laboratory would include all of that information.
Okay, and I was just confused because in this report, the white towel 26A and the washcloth 26E are both inconclusive. They didn't do this. So basically they're tested 2 times, and on one test you got one result, and on another test you got another result.
That could be one possibility, or it could be that the test produced a color other than the expected color change in the presence of blood.
Why would you have an expected color change?
Because the chemicals are designed a specific way to where when blood is present, so the one chemical we expect to turn blood because of the chemical reaction that is happening, and the other one will turn pink because of its specific chemical components in that reaction that's occurring.
Okay, so I guess the important thing to note is with 26A and E is that we don't know if it's blood.
That's correct.
Now, could there have been any additional testing done on that? Had it been requested to see if a determination could be made?
For blood specifically,
Correct.
the only other test that we could perform for blood is one that we test for specifically blood of human origin, which is called a hemotrace test, and that was not done on these specific items.
But it could have been done.
Potentially, yes.
Okay. Now, EM1 and EM2, I am assuming that is what the swabs were labeled as. Correct?
Yes, that would be my assumption as well, based on usually when we have quotation marks around something, that's exactly what was written on the item package.
Exactly. And it also says EM1, EM2 wet sample. Let me say all of these photographs have already been admitted. So, and you probably not going to know this, but is it a fair assessment that if something comes in and it's labeled EM, well, can we agree that EM is evidence marker?
That would be my general knowledge, yes.
And if I had a case and something was EM1 and EM2 and I had evidence marker 1 and 2, that's where those samples were taken from?
I would generally accept that, yes.
Okay. So we can kind of presume that this is 1 and this is 2 that you tested.
Yes,
Okay.
that would be my expectation.
Okay. Now, tell me about, because you were saying that in this test, where is it? That you got an incomplete DNA profile obtained from the blood stain
Yes,
card.
but I believe this is the report that we are not using. But yes, there was an incomplete profile obtained from the bloodstain card.
I will go to the one y'all amended.
Thank you.
An incomplete DNA profile was obtained on bloodstain card item 4.
Yes, correct.
That part wasn't amended.
That's correct. That was correct in the original report.
I think it really wasn't the only thing that was actually changed in the amended report, where the only thing that was any matter was the number.
Yes, there was the statistical frequency for some of the samples was amended. And if you look at the first paragraph in the results and conclusions section, it details out the changes that were made.
Oh, okay. Results and conclusions.
This would be, oh, I'm sorry, this is the wrong report. This is not the amended report.
Ah, you put in the amended one, right? The amended
Yeah,
report.
it's number 11.
Number 11. On me.
5 is that one, 11 is.
Okay, I'll show you. So, there it is.
It says amended here. That's it.
There we go. So you essentially, you made a statement indicating how many individuals were obtained, and these are the things right here that you changed, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. But you still got an incomplete profile on the DNA card,
Yes,
correct?
correct.
Why do you have an incomplete profile?
So there could be different reasons why we have an incomplete profile, but with the knowledge that the body may have been burned, that's not unexpected. When we have DNA that's been exposed to high heat or extreme conditions, sometimes DNA will be lost in that process. So that would be my expectation here, is that it was just due to the condition of the sample that we were not able to get all the DNA information at all locations.
Okay. And get rid of that one. Let's talk about item 25B, the L2 shifter. So that was a swab taken from what you've got, or somebody could put in quotation, I think Ms. Bailey, taken from the L2 shifter, right? That's what the package would have said.
Yes, that's what the package would have said those swabs were from.
So if we've already heard evidence about what the L2 shifter was, then that's what that is. So now with that, there we go. With 25B, so that was Melody's DNA that was found on that swab.
The profile matched Melody Farris, yes.
Now, nothing in your report actually says that that swab contained blood or anything like that. Could that have just been a dry swab?
It's from the same swabs that were tested in the blood examination report where blood was indicated on that sample.
Okay, so there's a sample of blood on the swab, and then that's what you tested and compared the DNA to.
That's correct.
Okay. And do you have any, firearms training with the GBI, and not actually shooting, testing, and things like that?
No, I do not.
Okay. So we all will wait to ask you about that. How about regarding the arson analysis report? Do you have any training on that?
No, I do not.
Okay. But you'll know this. This is an easy question. We can assume that, such as in item 7, 8, and 9, or I'm sorry, just 7 and 8, gauze identified as recovered from the hands. You would assume that that is swabbed on the hands, right?
Just to clarify, I do not have any training or expertise in this method, but as a layperson, my expectation would be yes, that gauze was used to swab hands.
Okay. All right, that's all I got, Judge.
Anything else? All right, let me step down. Thank you, ma'am. Y'all got another witness ready? All right. Y'all need anyone need a break? Yeah. Okay. All right, that's fine. We'll take a short one. The first one was unexpected, so this would be the time we would normally take a break.